Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. This podcast is for those who are living with the effects of prenatal exposure to alcohol, their loved ones, and anyone else wanting to learn more about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Each week, you'll hear from someone whose expertise is either professional or living experience with FASD. I'm your host, Patti Kasper, bringing you both. Now let's get started with another candid conversation. Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. I'm your host. And this week I wanted to bring to the mic a dear friend of mine, Suzanne Emery, who I first met when I started taking training with FASCETS, which has undergone a name change. So it was Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Consultation Education Training Services, and now it is FASCETS Center for Neurodiversity. Did I get that right?
You got it right, Patti.
Yeah, great new name. And it is kind of nice not having to spell out everything that the acronym stood for. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was my involvement with FASCETS was life-changing. And I think, Suzanne, you are the first person that I told outside of my immediate family that I am on the spectrum. And it's because of an activity in the class I took from you. So yeah, very life-changing. And from what I remember, oh gosh, how many years ago was that at this point? 5 or 6 years ago?
It's a good question. I don't remember if it was before or after COVID.
It was after.
Okay.
Or during.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, I think, the first or possibly the second of the all virtual model way that you guys were doing it. I think it was the first.
Okay. Yeah. So it was right. It was during COVID then.
Yeah. Yeah. So long time. And I remember you telling me that my aha moment was not the first time that you had somebody, who came to FASCETS because of either curiosity or because of a family member or because, like me, they're a professional wanting to up their knowledge and their skills, and who had such a major life-shifting revelation. You've been with FASCETS for, oh gosh, how many years now?
That is a good question, but I think it's about 11.
Okay.
Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah. And like me, you came to it to learn, and then you quickly became part of the training staff. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Came to FASCETS because I needed help with my son, raising my son, and it was so life transforming for me that yes, I changed my whole life work to be around this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really did too, because I took this deep dive into fetal alcohol so that I could better support the kids and families on my caseload as a foster and adoption social worker. But the miracle of my being able to reframe my own life, the greater self-understanding and grace that came from that new perspective that fit so much better than any of the other explanations for my life, which I had tried to use until then. It really shifted me again away from working with kids and families to working with adults. Mm-hmm. It's very powerful. And tell me before, we don't want this episode to be all me yammering on. So, so tell me, Suzanne, what are some of the really powerful experiences you've had in your time with FASCETS?
Mm-hmm. Wow, they're countless. I think what makes me so passionate about this work is that it is always surprising to me when I do either training like one-on-one with people or in groups online or face-to-face. Just like you said, Patty, people usually come to the training thinking of a specific reason why they're there. Either they're raising a child that they know is on the fetal alcohol spectrum or another brain-based difference, or they're a professional wanting this training to help understand and be able to work more effectively and appropriately with people with all kinds of brain-based differences.
Or they're an adoptive parent and nothing else they have found has worked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as people come and with that specific person or population in mind, it always happens in every single group or even just with an individual that all of a sudden, like happened to you, there's this aha, like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't only apply to my child, my work. I'm on this spectrum, I have a brain-based difference, or my
Which is me.
my partner, my spouse, the person I'm married to or living with does,
Mhm.
or that neighbor, or my father, or it just like it's amazing how understanding behaviors through a brain-based lens all of a sudden we see ourselves and the whole world differently.
Mhm.
And that kind of sets in place this domino effect or ripple effect of, if we let it, incredible healing and transformation, both for ourselves as well as in all of our relationships. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really what it's still kind of surprises me how this material feels like it's alive
Mhm.
and it just settles on people in such amazing ways that ends up really transforming their whole lives. So, I mean, there's thousands of stories about how that has happened just time
Mhm.
and time and time again. And I'm just one person that's using this material. I know this is true for now. I think we're getting close to 100 facilitators around the world that are trained using this material. So it's pretty amazing.
That is awesome. And one of my friends is in the current cohort, Carl. So he has the other end of North Dakota. So between the two of us, we should be able to get great things done here,
That's awesome, Patty.
hopefully. Hopefully.
Yeah.
What are some of the other revelations you've had since joining the staff at Facets?
Well, I think one of the things I just continue to be so um just refreshed over is, Facets is still a very small kind of grassroots organization.
Mhm.
We're not interested in like becoming, it's not a business. Nobody's in this to make money. We are in it because we truly believe that this is the facets neurobehavioral approach is the most effective, ethical, appropriate way to really see everyone, but especially people with brain-based differences. And so the facets team, the core team of the executive director and program directors, we are all good friends and we are just really open. We realize that this is a continual journey of learning together. This world continues, the brain-based difference world continues to change rapidly with the language we use and how we understand brain-based differences. And so we're continually wanting to do things better and more effectively and in the most respectful way for people with brain-based differences in the way we talk and the way we and so I think it feels more like a family, like a big, huge family, than a company or a business that's whatever the motivation behind it is. It's really, I think all of us just have a huge heart
Yeah.
to be life changers and make this world a better place for
Yeah.
people
And a shared
with
mission.
brain-based differences.
Yeah. You're all on the same page in terms of being able to walk out your mission statement. You know, every company creates a mission statement, but I think few walk it out every day.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I really appreciate about FASCETS Center for Neurodiversity is you guys really walk it out every single day. And I certainly have become very fond of each and every one of you that I've interacted with. Just a super, super bunch of people. And I had a thought and it just flitted away.
That's okay. Yeah.
Probably after I stop recording. Oh, yeah. Always the way. Are there, okay, one of the things that circled through my mind real quick while you were speaking was that in your material, it's more than just hey, parents, this is what you do, right? It's, it's more than just setting up the parameters in the process, but it's also a challenge to society in the way that collectively we think about things. And there's a lot of work to be done in that arena if we're ever going to get anywhere breaking down the stigma. Yeah. What have you seen movement with more than any of the other societal perspectives?
I think that a couple different things. I think from the time I started doing these trainings, probably about 11 years ago, the material always was like brand new. Like almost everybody that came to those trainings, like they'd never really heard of the brain-based approach or linking brain and behavior and then what that means in the way that we respond and accommodate and build on strengths of a person. That all kind of felt like everyone was like, whoa, I've never heard this before. I would say today, as we have people coming to trainings, it's not that there aren't people that it's totally fresh for, but I would say more and more, there's more of a familiarity of, yes, oh, I've heard this before, or I've, at least coming in, kind of making the link between brain and behavior. Now, what that means still is, that's why people come, because making that link between understanding brain and behavior and then what that means in the way that we respond or understand somebody and even towards ourself, right? Like a lot of the work is internal for us, understanding why things are so frustrating or difficult or create big emotions in us. So I think people come in just a little farther along in the education of the brain-based approach, which is really exciting because it means that this information is getting out there, that people, whether it's in schools or different systems, that we're just a little bit farther along in understanding this. We still have a long ways to go. The other piece that I've seen that is, I think we also have a long ways to go, but there's just a little less stigma is around people showing up in webinars and trainings. And for example, on the first day, being willing to say, you know what? I'm a biological mom and I didn't understand this for whatever reason. And my child was prenatally exposed to alcohol while I was pregnant with them. And just feeling a little more safe to share their stories and coming into this space, not having to be quiet about it or
That's really exciting
it
because that
is.
means not only is the reality of the damage that alcohol causes making it into public awareness, but so is the fact that the stigma exists and needs to go away.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's showing progress in both areas. That's very exciting, Suzanne.
Yeah, it is really exciting. And it's just so beautiful that, um, yeah, for whatever reason, the environment that's set up in the facets trainings. I mean, that is one of our goals, to create kind of an environment of safety where people can be vulnerable and share who they really are and their stories. And I think that a lot of people perceive that. And so I would say that was very rare, never happened like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So I also, whether it's really getting out kind of as a topic out in society, or whether it's the way that we kind of set up the environment from the get-go with the trainings, I think I always just feel so honored when somebody's willing to share their own personal stories around fetal alcohol.
And to
Or
be that vulnerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I know a few weeks ago I did an interview with two of the other meliorists. There's a group of four of us who are all FASD authors. I'm in my lower 60s and I'm the baby of the bunch. So we're considering this work to be legacy work. Something that we can hand on to the next generation of practitioners and researchers and trainers. And Antonio made the point of saying it takes 17 years for a fact that comes out in research to take hold in society's consciousness
Yeah.
and to take effect in systems. That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So if we're starting to see it in after 11 years, that gives me a lot of hope that the next handful of years we may see some pretty exciting changes.
Yeah, I mean, it is really exciting that it could happen faster. I know Diane Melvin, who's the author of the first book of Trying Differently Rather Than Harder and the Facets, the original material, she made a timeline once. I think it started at the year 2000, and she predicted by the year 2050, anybody who didn't automatically understand certain behaviors and like, oh, this person has a brain-based difference. That means blah, blah, right? Just like we do with other more physical, it would be the rare person that didn't just automatically get that, right? Just
Yeah.
like when everybody thought the world was flat. And it was crazy to think that the world was round,
Right?
as was proposed, and how long it took for everybody to like,
The
that's just
trust that they're not going to fall off.
the given fact that the world is round. Now it would seem ridiculous that somebody believed that it was flat, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, my hope, and I mean, I see great hope that we are making progress maybe more quickly than even would be normal, right? For
Yeah.
um
Her guess was what year?
her guess was 2050,
Okay.
like 50
Well,
years
we're
from
halfway there.
the time. Well, yeah, the work started I think in the early 90s, her work. So
Yeah.
that would actually be 60 years of the initiation kind of facets work. But yeah, as we know, this is a complicated, I mean, the fetal alcohol piece is a complicated
Yeah.
topic that there's lots of reasons why it's even more difficult for it
Yeah.
to Yeah.
And it's one that I think more than any other specialized knowledge in the field of social work or psychology, learning about FASD, there's no one ringing that bell.
Mm-hmm.
Once you learn it, it changes you.
Yeah.
It changes the way you see your clients or your patients or your neighbors or your family members. Yeah, it's pretty profound impact.
Yeah.
So, but working for facets and training people like me and Carl, that's not all you do. What else keeps you so busy?
Yeah. So I also feel so grateful that I can use the facets material in a whole other area of my life. Well, I use it in a lot of different arenas, actually. But another huge piece is I have worked for a mission organization for um, over 30 years now. And the name of that organization is Mesa Global. And so under them, I have a project called Created to be Free, Hope for Families Affected by Alcohol, where more in a faith kind of based community, I use the FASCETS neurobehavioral approach also to do one-on-one trainings. A lot of parents sometimes, like just this week, I had a conversation with somebody that was referred to me through that organization, a grandma who her daughter is fostering children and she's very involved in the children's lives. And many of these children have, been exposed to alcohol or drugs prenatally. And so having a conversation with her, and I think she and her daughter maybe are going to take the training. She realized, oh my gosh, we need to know this. This is, and then I also, under that organization right now, I currently have a support group that is for spouses who are married to somebody with a brain-based difference.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. There's the majority of the people in that group, they're all women right now, are married to pastors who their husbands are pastors and their husbands are on the fetal alcohol spectrum. And it's very fascinating because, one of the common characteristics of people on the fetal alcohol spectrum, they tend to be very outgoing and love to social interaction. And actually, they're really good at teaching other people. They are very confident and they can get very good at a particular, you know, piece of information or interest they have. But then the actual like one-on-one interactions or actually what happens at home is a totally different thing,
Yeah.
right? And so,
And I like that saying, those that can't teach.
yeah. So that has been a really exciting group for me to watch.
Yeah.
All these women, again, not all these women took the training thinking about their husbands. They came maybe thinking of somebody else, and then in the course realized, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
think my husband is on the
Yeah.
spectrum. Um, and that, I mean, we've been going now for probably 3 years, and just the transformation that I have seen in their relationships, these women, it's not that they don't continue to struggle, but they have actually grown to where their marriage was so difficult and just every day was a struggle. They actually have grown to enjoy their spouse and see these beautiful qualities and characters and the way they're trying to show their love, which isn't necessarily the way that the women feel loved, right? And then just,
There's all that mismatch between love languages.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then just the understanding and accommodating. I mean, one of them just a couple weeks ago, she was so excited because they planned this whole trip while her daughter was gone. They were going to get in their RV and have a camping trip. And the wife was so excited about all this. And at the end, it became way too overwhelming for her husband to get all this stuff together to go to, and they ended up having a staycation, which at first was disappointing to the woman, but she's learning, right, how to adjust like her expectations and her dreams and still meet her own needs. But they actually ended up having a beautiful time in the things that they decided to do at home. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's one of the areas. And then I also work in clinics 2 days a week. So one day a week I'm at a pediatric clinic and I use the FASCETS neurobehavioral approach every day. I am referred a lot of the children with behavioral issues. And so it's a beautiful place to begin to talk to parents about brain-based differences and using some of the FASCETS tools, the exploration tool.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
getting into the practicalities of that, as well as at the other clinic I work at, it's an adult clinic for people that are uninsured, homeless, immigrant population. And of course, there are many people that come in that have brain-based differences. And so it just gives me like a whole other understanding of adults who, right, the rest of the, I mean, sometimes people, who consistently don't show up for appointments or are late. And, most clinics have these very rigid,
Yeah.
like, okay, you missed 3 and you can't come here
Right.
anymore,
But
or you have
how
to,
many of us struggle with time blindness?
yeah. And
You
so
know,
it's been beautiful to just like, the staff hasn't taken the training, but just my understanding and how I can talk to the staff, like just remember the population we serve, you guys. And this may be not intentional. This may be a real struggle for this person to get everything together to be here on time, or maybe we need to figure out a different way of reminding them. They may not remember that they have. And so, that's been a really beautiful. And then another thing I do is I do evaluations for people applying for disability in Oregon. And that too has been another beautiful place. Many of the people that come in for those obviously also have brain-based differences. And, all of them, I would say, come in with such high anxiety because of the way they've been treated by professionals, making them feel crazy and like they're making things up. And so many of them, I have white noise going in the waiting room with like, and just that, many of them tell me, oh my gosh, this feels like a totally different place than, and that I can deeply listen and believe what they're telling me and assure them that I'm going to try to help them get the support they need. And I think, yeah, it's just, in our world, it's so fast paced, and in clinical settings, there's so little time to work with people. And most clinicians still don't have this understanding. And so we just jump to conclusions about people and why they're doing what they're doing, and they're irresponsible and they don't deserve this and blah, 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 blah. And it's simply not true for the great majority of people.
like how many social workers are so frustrated with birth parents who can never seem to complete their program to get their kids back. And they're left scratching their heads like, gosh, if I didn't have my kids, I would move heaven and earth in order to get them back. And it's not even a hard plan. Why can't they do it? Without realizing that just as alcohol use flows down generations and families, so does the physical effects and the cognitive effects, that just the damage that is done to how people are able to interact with the systems that are in place and how rigid they are.
Yeah.
No, it's just so sad. It is so sad. And then I also think about, because I never think of just my perspective, right? I always think on, thanks to the social work training, I think on macro levels as well. And I think about how difficult it is to change the way systems view things. And could it be that the department heads who have all the power, right, are choose to stay in denial because the feelings of guilt that might wash over them, it would be like standing at the bottom of a tidal wave. It would be like being on a beach in where did that huge flood come, the tidal wave, the tsunami, a few years ago? Can you
Oh yeah,
imagine
in Indonesia or yeah.
standing on the beach when those waves were washing in? I mean, that must be how it feels. If to know that, yeah, there were all these indicators and all these opportunities to do things differently, and I did not allow my system to change.
Mhm.
That who wouldn't run from that?
Yeah, or I mean, I think a lot of them just don't even have a clue. They don't have the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
They don't have this training, and so unless somebody in their organization gets it and comes back, right? And it can feel like with parents, right? It can feel at first like, well, we can't make all these changes for all these people. I mean, that would be, and yet in the end, if you understand and make
Mhm.
accommodations, which usually are helpful for all people, not just people with brain-based
Mhm.
differences, we end up um, having less stress, having less work, and really making it a better fit for everybody, right? And people needing maybe less services because we're understanding who they are and not trying to make them fit in
Yeah,
boxes
and
that they
because
don't
they've actually
fit in.
received help. Yeah, not every service is helpful.
No.
And if for no other reason than the way that it is sometimes delivered.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know you needed to get going, but if we could just super quick, last point,
Mhm.
with the change in name for Facets to Center for Neurodiversity, um, I remember, however many years ago it was, 5 or 6, that you guys said this may have been created with alcohol in mind, alcohol exposure, but it works with any type of brain-based difference. You guys have fully embraced that to the point where, the umbrella at Facets has expanded to cover all neurodiversity. That was very intentional and very on target. But talk a little bit about how you've seen, what fruit have you seen come from those changes?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think, yes, this has been obviously something that has been thought about for years, right?
Mhm.
And I think many of us had experienced that the population that perhaps needed to have the model in their hands the most, which the target population from the beginning of facets was always people prenatally exposed to alcohol,
Mhm.
because that condition is still so little understood and so little education out in the greater population, and still so much stigma,
Mhm.
that when like you're doing promotion for a training and you're saying that this training is for people exposed to alcohol prenatally, instead of bringing in the people that applies to, it was starting to close doors because, first of all, lots of people who are prenatally exposed or have somebody in their life prenatally exposed don't even know that, right? And so they would think it didn't apply. I mean, why would I go to that? It doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
Um, or because of stigma, right? Maybe I do know that either I'm on the spectrum or my child is on the spectrum, but because alcohol and fetal alcohol spectrum still carries a certain amount of stigma, and depending on who you are, that can be greater or less. It just felt like there was kind of a barrier actually to people receiving the information that actually needed it. And on top of that, yes, realizing that as we taught this model and people came to the trainings, not only with fetal alcohol spectrum conditions, but all kinds of other brain-based conditions, autism and ADHD, and then even on, the other spectrum
Dementia.
of life, dementia, Alzheimer's, and we were seeing, this approach works for all these conditions.
Yeah.
And so many of them are overlapping and have such similar characteristics, like fetal alcohol and ADHD and autism. They look so similar. And so that's what we started having conversations about, how can we get this information out to everybody who needs it? And it ended up being that, yes, this really applies. The whole work of FASCETS began with prenatal alcohol exposure and what alcohol does to the developing brain, and understanding what that looks like in behaviors and how to support and accommodate and build on strengths. And yet at the same time, all of that works for any brain-based condition. So yeah, we just wanted to open up that world and umbrella so that really everybody understands that this approach is very helpful for all human beings, and especially for any brain-based condition. And we still do, a lot of our teachings still, we educate on fetal alcohol because it is one of the diagnoses that still continues to be least understood, the least amount of education, and the most stigma. And so that does continue to be a focus of our training, but it's just much broader and bigger now.
Well, I celebrate the shift that you guys made, and the broader reach that you will have, and the greater impact as well. So, but I want to honor your time limits. So thank you, Suzanne, so much for joining me on the mic today for Living with FASD. I really appreciate that. And I will always appreciate you for your role in my journey.
Well, thank you, Patti. It's an honor and a privilege to sit here with you today and have a conversation about all this. And you're one of the people that continue to make it worth all the time and effort I put into it, because I see what can happen right in front of my eyes, right? It's just amazing what has happened in your life since you took the training, and how that has transformed your life and work. And it's a privilege now to call you colleague. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never, 5 years ago, I never would have foreseen the book, the podcast, any of that. So yeah, it's what a ride.
Yeah.
What a ride. It's been great.
Never a dull moment.
No. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Living with FASD Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. Feel free to send comments, questions, and topics you'd like to learn more about, hear more about, to me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to like, follow, and share this podcast on whatever platform you use so that more people can find the podcast. Have a blessed week, everyone, and tune in next Monday for another candid conversation on Living with FASD.